This is Main Street with Gary Allen. Now, here's Gary.
And good afternoon to you, good evening, good morning, whenever you're watching this particular program. Before we get going, I would like to say to all my fellow veterans out there, job well done. God bless you and your families. To those that are no longer with us, you are the true heroes, keeping that flag waving and keeping our freedoms free. And thank you so very much. And to the gentlemen and the women that I served with, I love you all very much. I do remember most of you, even if you're not with us. So happy Veterans Day to all of you and your families, and God bless you. I'd also like to thank the Japanese Gardens right now for their continued support of this particular program. They will continue on with us into next year as well. I also want to remind you that on dbtv.tv, you can catch this show at it's been on 7 o'clock the last couple of Tuesday nights, but either at 7 or 8 p.m. I have to nail that down with David, who runs DBTV. You can also catch us on Roku, Amazon Fire, Smart TV, and any place where you have Wi-Fi devices. And also you can catch us out on our YouTube channel, which we will start promoting that real soon. Tommy may even be able to get that up during this particular program, and we'll run it on the bottom here. My two guests, as always, as we talk sports, are two gentlemen that are good friends of mine from ESPN, Mr. Dave Lamont, also from South Florida. You name the radio station, he's been there. He's been the voice of betting in South Florida for many years. And no, he doesn't owe me any money. I don't owe him any money, but Larry King probably did. Mr. Jeff DeForrest.
I told you the story with Larry King. I don't know if Dave was ever affected by this because he probably wasn't as associated with King as a degenerate as I was. But I used to go to the betting windows at Hialeah Park long after King had left South Florida and already made it big. And for some reason, he had bounced so many checks there because I was in the media. People felt like I had a direct connection to Larry King, who I didn't really know at all. I mean, I knew him like a lot of people did when he first started overnights on the Mutual Radio Network. And yet 30 years later, after the fact, after he had left South Florida, people would come running up to me going, you can get a hold of this guy. Get me my money from Larry King. And there were still any number of people that were carrying bad paper from Larry King here in South Florida. He never made amends for that.
You guys both know that I interned for him as well as worked for him at IOD when they were on 79th Street.
No, I didn't know that, but I always said this, and I said when Larry King passed, 49 and 9/10 states went, oh, that's a shame. What a guy. And one county went, son of a gun, he finally went. The people down here knew him as almost no one else did. He carved a unique path, to say the least, when he was in this neighborhood before he moved out to LA.
Oh, I would run into him in Los Angeles all the time on Fairfax. There was a delicatessen right there, and we'd have lunch together every once in a while. Will Schreiner would join us every once in a great while. So, I mean, I didn't borrow any money from him. He didn't borrow any money from me because he knew I didn't have it. Hey, kid, you got any money? No. But he knew my Uncle Tubby pretty well. And he and Tubby both, they were heavy gamblers. All right, let's get into this. Miami first loss. I blame the defense so badly. I blame that defense. The offensive line let me down too. The defensive coordinator, as far as I'm concerned, should be shot and fired after the end of the season. How do you two gentlemen feel about it? Because they made no adjustments during that game. They came off the edge. A quarterback who couldn't throw, they had to bring in the substitute, which did a very good job. And that defense coordinator made no adjustments at all. Nothing.
I want to let Dave tee this one up first because I always respect his viewpoint on the Hurricanes. And, of course, and I had Dave Lamont, I wish it was him instead of the other guy moment when I happened to jump in the car right at the climactic moment of the game. I had to go somewhere watching a game and looked like, well, there was maybe an outside chance of a comeback there by the Hurricanes.
Listen, with Ward, you always have a chance.
Yeah, and they get the ball, and I jump in the car just in time to hear the description of the fumble by Cam Ward. And I thought he was going to fall all the way from the press box. I don't know how high up it is at Georgia Tech, Dave. I don't know if you must have done some
I have. It's kind of up there. Yeah, it's up there.
I thought we were going to see a chalk outline of Joe Zagacki on the field, just splattered face down. But
that's not a bad thing.
I've never heard such disappointment. I don't know how you feel. I mean, I always have to factor in the Cristobal factor. I'm just not a big fan I know, if you want to describe chaos, I would equate Butch Davis's first game against UCLA as a
Yeah,
game
well,
day coach, right up there with the insurrection on January 6th, where people are crawling up the walls of the Capitol building, and you're saying, "What the hell is going on out there?" Great guy, great recruiter, but not much of a game day coach. And unfortunately, I think Cristobal pales in comparison. It doesn't even measure up to Butch Davis's early Hurricane standards as a game day coach. But I mean, it's amazing. A one-dimensional team with two injured running backs, a guy who's going to throw the ball 6 times, like it was Bob Greasy in the Super Bowl after the 72 season campaign to win the championship. And they can't stop him with supposedly a great pass, run defensive line.
Yeah.
Seemed a little odd to me. I don't know about you, Dave, but it did seem like it was eventually going to catch up with them. These late game escapes that they were orchestrating. Usually that happens for a while, and if you're lucky enough to win a bunch of situations like that, eventually you get caught in one. And this was a thorough domination, though, by Georgia Tech. I thought, even though it was only a 5-point game.
Dave,
they left 9 points on the field with strange fourth down decisions. Another thing that you have a very good kicker who is a Groza Award finalist at the moment, and you have a chance to take those points and you go for it on a 4th and 3. In a situation where you're not desperate for points, you just need to keep putting them up on the board. The game is going to be close. Georgia Tech wasn't going to blow them out, even though they were hogging the ball. They weren't any interested in going up and down the field quickly. I think that was one problem. That's a coaching call there. And you count on your players to execute, and they don't. But why ask them to do some of this stuff? So that's one thing that bothered me right there. The other thing that's going on, and I've read a lot about this online, is that it's not just the defense, it's the safeties in particular that seem to be really struggling in this defense. And something else that was a problem is that this defense doesn't seem to do well versus motion-type offenses. When there's a lot of pre-snap movement, it seems like for whatever reason, and that's also got to be on coaching to get these guys, okay, listen, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. Now, I'm not dumb enough to see or arrogant enough to suggest that the coaches aren't reminding them that these teams like to use motion, but they still don't seem to handle it very well. So those are the biggest things. It was interesting. It reminded me of Georgia Tech under Paul Johnson when they didn't throw the ball because he didn't want to throw the ball.
Yeah.
And that offense was basically the old triple option. And this is kind of what they did. And it's not an easy offense to prepare for. Maybe if you had a completely healthy quarterback, you wouldn't have gotten this style of offense. But they came up with a smart game plan. We don't want them to have the ball. They're the top offense in the country. You have a Heisman candidate quarterback, a guy who can beat you on any play, who invents things on the fly, all that stuff. And I thought it was a brilliant game plan, and they executed it, unlike Miami, which did not execute its game plan. And on the defensive end, they've been vulnerable. There's no doubt about it. Ever since the beginning of the year, when they played weaker teams, now that they're in conference play, yes, it is not a national championship quality defense.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, too, Dave and Jeff, I know you'll agree with me on this. Mario is an offensive lineman. And the O-line let them down. Now, maybe it's because there was no continuity. They weren't on the field long enough. They really couldn't get things going. But wasn't there, Dave, a touchdown called back because of a penalty? And if that touchdown had been allowed to stand, they would have won the game?
Yeah. But that happens all the time. This happens in so many games. You have to come back. Gosh, what game was I watching that something like that happened? You just recover from that. I think it's the other decisions that hurt them a little bit. And you're right. Listen, I was at that UCLA game, Jeff, and with Butch, and he had never been a head coach before. Mario has, and that was a very good UCLA team as well. Jonathan Ogden was on that team. All they did was run to his side the entire time with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who was good enough to be an NFL running back for a few years. Here, you didn't have that kind of talent on the field for Georgia Tech. And here on the Miami side, you have a guy who's coached at a big-time program before here. So he does – I'll give you guys this way. I know we're not going to talk much about basketball today, but let's compare people on the sidelines in orange and green. In basketball, well, Katie Meyer's not there anymore for the women. We still have Jim Larinaga. When you watch them and when you watch now, you look at them and go, yeah, they know what they're doing. I'm good. They'll make, I trust them. I trusted Katie Meyer with the women. I trust Larinaga with the guys. I haven't gotten that level of complete comfortability yet with Mario. And I hate to say that, but at this point, that's where I'm at.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, only time will tell. Here's the other situation, too, that I want to bring up. I brought this up, I think, in the last show we were together. Cam is gone one way or the other. He's, going to be a first-round draft pick, whether he's the first pick in the draft or whether he's the 10th pick in the draft. Where does the next quarterback come from? Because in the previous game against Duke, Cam was playing right to the bitter end, and they were up enough that they could have brought the kid in, whoever the kid is, the next guy up, and got him a little bit of experience. I mean, I'm sure. I know I just saw where one quarterback decommitted from Miami. I don't know who he was. He's committed to Florida. But I'm
really
sure there are
quarterbacks right now. So,
yeah.
Well, next year.
Yeah. But I'm sure there's got to be somebody out there or a couple of guys that maybe Mario, as Jeff pointed out, he's a great recruiter that he's looking at and saying, okay, he's not Cam Ward, but he has some of the instincts that Cam Ward has, because they can't go back to just a regular. I mean, yeah, they could go back to a regular quarterback because they do have a good running game. There's no doubt about it. Does Martinez have any more time left, or is this it for him? Or is he a junior?
Not sure about Martinez's status.
Came from Oregon State, right?
Yeah.
Probably has like 9 years of eligibility left by today's
only
standards.
if he's a tight end. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's fantastic.
I don't know that that's so much of a concern. I mean, this is very much like the Dolphins situation and a big mystery. And one of my favorite things, and I'm sure, I don't know if Dave has punched his ticket, but is there any chance, Dave, that you went ahead and went on the money line with a 12-team parlay betting against all 12 Florida teams, 9 in the college football ranks and 3 in the pros, to all lose on the same weekend, which is unprecedented?
I'm not sure some of those teams you could even bet on. But,
well, I mean, we're looking at
you're
what?
talking about
They all lost.
FAMU and Stetson,
Miami
right?
lost, right? Miami lost.
Yeah.
FSU, Florida, they all got blown out. Miami was at least in a close game. The other two were blowouts. You had FAU lose, Bethune-Cookman, FAMU, Stetson, UCF, South Florida,
USF,
the Jaguars, USF, right, as I said, and the Buccaneers.
Yeah.
And you're right now sitting at 0-11 with Florida teams. I believe Tim Reynolds of the Associated Press brought this up, that it would be unprecedented to have all 12 Florida teams, 3 in the pros and 9 in the college ranks, lose on the same weekend. But our last hope is tonight with the Miami Dolphins going against the Los Angeles Rams on the road as underdogs. Could it happen? I mean, did you do it, Dave? Did you go ahead and put $5 on FanDuel on a 12-team money line parlay against the Florida teams?
I don't think you'll find Bethune-Cookman on FanDuel or FSU, FAMU, pardon me, for that matter. I mean, every look, Florida had, I don't even know the name of the kid who played quarterback, and they played at Texas. Florida State, we know what's going on there. That now Randy Shannon is back as the defensive coordinator, a job he's held at other schools before. The former Miami head coach is now their new defensive coordinator, because there wasn't a defensive coordinator this morning after the firings over the weekend by Mike Norvell. He took out 3 coaches' legs. Usually the first sign of a guy who knows that the next coach is going to be fired is him. USF is very mediocre. I think the UCF, I'm wondering if they're ready to move on from Gus Malzahn. That's not working out.
You ought to hear his press conferences. They are just, Gus Malzahn, Dave. We're doing a good job up here. We're trying to win something here. We're trying to do something. Gus, go away. I think he's lost the locker room.
He may be shown the door. But honestly, the biggest disappointment off the top of my head is Florida Atlantic. We all kind of knew Florida was going to have a tough year. Well, actually, Florida State's the biggest disappointment. But yes, Florida Atlantic would be number 2. And I hate saying that because I was the original voice of that program and still good for them to do well. But you bring in a big-time name in Tom Herman, and you just, as Don Shula would say, you're not getting it done. And, FIU, the only reason they didn't lose is they didn't play. But they lose all the time too, and you wonder about their existence as a program. Like, what are they doing? They don't threaten anybody. Their last good coach was Mario Cristobal.
Yeah.
So he did a lot with that program.
And the last good coach at FAU, excuse me, was Lane Kiffin, correct?
Yeah, and the funny thing is, when the rumors of him leaving started, there were a bunch of people that said, "Hey, he really loves South Florida, loves living in Boca, loves going out on the water and fishing and doing all these other things that a lot of South Floridians do." But inevitably, he had much bigger dreams, and things are doing okay for him at.
Yeah.
And I hate this. The SIP. Oh, hi.
Oh,
yeah, don't worry about it.
Would you please speak to my agent right there, Dave, and find out why I'm not getting what I'm supposed to be getting, please?
Yep.
Somebody has a cat's ass in his face as he's doing this and never misses a beat. That's a pro. That's a pro, Gary.
Well,
unbelievable.
Dave is a consummate professional.
I'm a big Tom Herman fan. I got to meet Tom Herman a couple of times on another show, and we sat and talked with him for a while. I couldn't be any more impressed with this guy.
Yeah.
I will say this, and I was a good friends with Charlie Partridge, who was the head coach there for a few years, 3 years, I believe, he was head coach before Lane Kiffin took over. And Charlie thought he was on the precipice of doing something good, but he kept going 3-9 every year. And unfortunately, that wasn't good enough to impress the people that were, in charge of making the decision to retain him or not. So he gets canned. And now now he's with the Indianapolis Colts, I believe, as a defensive line coach. But having left Pittsburgh, where he had great success as a D-line coach and really enjoyed it there, but he was fed up with the whole college system. And this leads into Tom Herman. I sensed, I usually, get a pretty quick read on people, but I sensed that as sharp as he is and as accomplished as he was to be in this position at FAU, he sort of was resigned to the idea that this was a near impossible situation at this point. Because if you put your emphasis on recruiting, you're going to get maybe that one local gem that escapes all of the other people that are after the South Florida kids. But if he demonstrates any ability at all as a freshman, he's gone the next year. And I felt that Tom was kind of explaining, and I've talked to him since then, that this is not a situation that lends itself to success at this point. Lane Kiffin, I think, benefited a great deal from his own connections and the fact that Charlie Partridge had laid a decent foundation out there where, had he been given another year or two, he might have been able to break through. Maybe not to the level where you're going to championship games or anything, but at least to the point where you were a winning franchise, as they were with Lane Kiffin. But Kiffin brought in a few guys of his own, had success, and I think he also sensed that it may be unsustainable at that level, Dave. I don't know. You did a lot more college football than I did.
That's fair, because the facilities are very good for that level, but you're not going to match what is available at bigger schools and larger schools and larger conferences, even though FAU has moved up into a good conference. It's interesting. Something else, and Jeff, to your point, you're right, because even now, even though we're very deep into the season, you can still pick up your phone and read a story about the former quarterback at this school, the former running back at that school. This guy came from here. And then early in the year, especially when somebody has success, and listen, Miami certainly has benefited more than just about anybody in the country with Cam Ward, but it seems like some of the best talent in the country has started somewhere else, and it may have has passport stamped to 2 other schools before he winds up, like Will Howard, for example, reaching some levels of success at different programs. This is how it's going to be. It's going to be very hard to go backwards. In fact, you can't. And colleges are now are trying to figure out the best ways and the best people to get involved in NIL negotiations and money. You talk to some Florida State people, and they'll tell you, geez, if we just made a stronger bid for Cam Ward, things would be a lot different. And they probably would be for Florida State. You've seen their quarterback play is god awful. It's sad. And Florida too, although they get Mertz from Wisconsin, who unfortunately got seriously injured. They have a promising freshman in Lagway. What did you guys think of the fact that they're bringing back that they announced before the Texas game, which they had to know was going to be bad, that they're bringing back Billy Napier?
I was stunned. I was stunned by it. Much like you said about the guy at FSU, I thought he was just playing out the season, and that was going to be the end of it, and they were going to move on. But Dave, you brought this up on the program before. You don't want to be changing head coaches that often, every so many years. You want to at least give a head coach an opportunity to get his program up and going. But it was shocking to me because I really thought he was 1 foot out the door. I really did. By the way, just real quick, Dave Lamont, Jeff DeForrest joining us here on Main Street. Gary Allen with you. I was shocked. Because I thought he was 1 foot right out the door.
I think that's what the fans wanted, and then they have some respectable performances, and they have their annual beating of Tennessee, and you think, okay, maybe things will be okay. This kid Lagway has some potential at quarterback, and if can you get to 6? Can you sneak into a bowl game? Well, you saw what their schedule was like. Before the show, I overheard you all talking about Miami's schedule. It was a particularly easy one this year, who they didn't have to deal with, and Florida has the exact opposite. They had a unbelievably awful stretch of teams to go through before things ease up a little bit at the end. So sometimes it's just the luck of the draw that helps you. I was just reading something before we started, was that of the top 5 that came out today, 3 teams in the top 5, which are Indiana, Texas, and Penn State, do not have a win over a ranked team yet.
It's funny, Dave, you bring that up, and Jeff, I'm sure you noticed it too. There are a lot of teams that are ranked in that top 10, top 15, like from last Tuesday night, that don't have any ranked wins. I mean, the only thing Miami had was Louisville, I think.
They weren't
would
ranked.
be the only one.
I don't think they were ranked at the time. They have been. You know who has the most ranked wins in the top 10? Alabama.
Yeah.
They're 4.
Not afraid to play anybody.
You had Alabama and Georgia playing each other, and
LSU.
I guess they both played LSU.
Right.
And you could say that in discussions about college football, it seemed like that was always brought up about just about anybody in the top 10, where the argument against them, the negativity was, well, they haven't really played anybody yet. And that was sort of universal, except for a couple of teams that had played each other, like Georgia and Alabama and LSU. But other than that, it didn't seem like anybody was overwhelmingly tested. I mean, remember back in the day, Dave, when UM would go on the road, they play Oklahoma one week, Nebraska the next week, and then they had their FSU Florida games.
But Jeff, they were kind of an independent. They were in the Big East.
They were even before the Big East. They played those teams because they had to.
And we would beat the crap out of Oklahoma and Nebraska because we ran, we were faster than they were. They were running the triple option, Oklahoma and Nebraska, and we were just beating the crap out of them. By the way, speaking of next year, first game out of the chute for Miami is at home against Notre Dame.
Yeah, well, good. Get it out of the way. The other thing that's happened is with the conferences expanding, like Mr. Creosote in Monty Python's The Meaning of Life. Just one thin wafer, sir. All right. That's why you're going to get these weird patches of scheduling and these oddball matchups that we're going to have to get used to. But if Florida got jammed this year, having to go to Austin with a very good Texas team, and you have these matchups, you're going to see SMU and some of those Stanford. You had Cal against Miami, which almost was a disaster. So I think that part of it is the expansion is creating some of these stretches for teams that they've never had to deal with before. And it's we're going to get some interesting matchups, but it's some of the traditional ones are going away, the ones you can count on every year. And that's where we are.
Have you also noticed in the ACC alone, the teams that have been on the top, like North Carolina and this one and this one and this one, they're terrible this year.
No, North Carolina's had quarterback problems. Number one, they lost a guy who's now an NFL starter. Yeah. And then they had a significant injury also at one point, too. So I think you could forecast them slipping a little bit. They'll probably at least get to a bowl game. They're about 500. Yeah, they're around 500, I believe.
This would have been a good year for us to play them finally.
Yeah, well, he might have actually won. Clemson is good, but I don't think they're great. Pitt
Dabo won't go into the portal.
Well, then you know what? Then that's the way. That's the shield he will die on.
God told him not to do it. No, he is guided by a higher power. Dabo.
Okay, Jeff,
he hides behind that. Yeah,
you're the gambler of the three of us.
Me? No, Dave is a serious degenerate here. I know this for a fact.
No, he's not a degenerate.
Yeah. I'm an underrated.
My half brother is not a degenerate. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
He's perverted, but he's not degenerate.
He's hanging around at Highline, waiting for playoff points to be decided to see whether or not he could eat after the session was over. Hoping that Joey would overserve. I remember those days.
Jeff, I'm the one keeping score. I can make anything I want.
All right. So, what from the degenerate world can I help you with here, Gary?
All right. Where is Woody Johnson just about had enough of Aaron Rodgers?
I wouldn't say that's nothing to do with gambling at all.
No, but I
readily
wanted
apparent that the thing didn't work out too well. I mean, think about the capital that they gave him.
Yeah.
Then on top of that, the assets they traded away to make the deal with Green Bay in the first place, even though it was obvious he was going to leave there. They still gave up a lot. And then he doesn't play at all, essentially, the first season. He plays 3 snaps. Comes back this year, and he looks kind of ordinary. I mean, does he look any different than Joe Flacco at 40-something years old does?
No.
Slinging a rock there for the Colts? I don't think so.
Terrible.
Well, I mean, he's had his moments like any of these backups do sometimes, where sometimes a guy comes in, raises a spark or ignites a spark, and then you're thinking, oh, good, we're okay with the backup. Look at Jameis Winston. Comes in for the Browns, looks great for one game, but then he reverts back to being Jameis and throws 17 picks in the next game. Wow, I mean, this looks like the greatest failed experiment that you could ever possibly have wrapped your arms around.
I'm trying to think of something.
2 years worth of Aaron Rodgers.
I mean,
the
you
guy
guys think of something comparable to this in the NFL?
Well, Deshaun Watson is sort of
perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And they invested more in Cleveland did in Watson than the Jets did in Aaron Rodgers.
Who was the guy that came from Atlanta and went to Indianapolis? Who was the quarterback that went from the Atlanta Falcons to the Colts a couple of years ago? And he was a total disaster.
Oh, you're talking about Matt Ryan?
Was it Matt? No, Matt Ryan.
Yeah, Matt Ryan.
He was pretty much done by the time.
But so was Rodgers, and
you thought Rodgers had a little shelf life. Well, when they first made the move, everybody was optimistic. I get the New York Post every day, so I read a lot about this stuff, and it's gotten to the status of one of those situations where you don't want to admit how wrong you were if you were the New York Jets. And unfortunately, look, this is a sad season for them. And you would have to think that after this year, what is the point of doing more with Aaron Rodgers? And then on top of that, even though he wasn't so sharp this week in a Minnesota win, Sam Darnold, who they threw in the towel on, was lighting up the National Football League this year. So
part of that is coaching. O'Connell is a good offensive-minded coach. And the Jets had a defensive-minded coach in Saleh before they blew him out, and that could be a little bit of a situation with philosophy and all that. Plus, but frankly, Darnold was bad.
Yes,
I mean that's the other thing. Is this a temporary thing with Darnold? He did not have a particularly good game against Jacksonville yesterday. They managed to win because Jacksonville's terrible and Trevor Lawrence is hurt. Even when he was there, they were bad. Yeah. So that's part of it, but. Yeah, and really the Jets are now hand fighting the Giants for which one of us is going to end up with a good quarterback from college one of these days, because they're both sinking really fast. And I can only imagine what's being set up there.
Is Roger Goodell part of the Trump administration and trying to alienate all of our allies in Europe? Because, I mean, these games that he's sending to Germany and earlier to London, he had the Jaguars there for 2 weeks in a row.
That's because they've been doing that for years, though. Their owner is got ties over there. I think they like to pick, and I think they primarily pick the East Coast teams because of the travel too. It just so happens there are some really bad East Coast teams.
But this game in Munich, I mean, if anything,
it's a long trip, guys. I mean, I will tell you, for my going to Vietnam and back 4 times. It drains you. Not going over, like if you fly from here to the West Coast, Dave, and you do quite a bit when you do your PBA stuff, it's not too bad, but it's the coming back.
Yeah, it's always that way. Anytime I go, the 3 hours one way is always better than 3 hours coming home. Yeah. I just think that's part of the reason that you're getting this, and it just so happens that the Patriots, the 2 New York teams are terrible. Jacksonville is. There was some thought that they were on the come this year, that their offense had some talent to it, and it's ETN, and you got some decent receivers, and Lawrence is going to bounce back, and well, we know how that worked out. And I'm surprised that the Commanders haven't gone. Washington and Baltimore, I don't know if they ever go either. Those are 2 good.
But they're playing good ball, Dave.
Well, they are. I'm saying
Commanders are playing good ball.
They're good East Coast teams. I don't think the Eagles. Well, the Eagles ended up in Brazil taking on the Packers.
Yeah.
Under bizarre circumstances also, with the field and the stadium and everything.
Yeah,
so I believe Goodell's trying to alienate all of our European allies.
Jeff,
to send them the Giants in Carolina, I mean, that was disgusting to even wake up to.
Jeff, I never have asked you this before. You're originally from California, right?
No, I grew up in New York, but I lived in California for about 8 years, which is where I got to know all of the comics that you're familiar with, including your man Tom Dreesen.
Oh yeah,
So,
Tommy did a great
'cause,
job a couple of weeks
for the
ago.
time I was out there, I was with the Unknown Comics sister, the lovely Annette Langston, and so he owned a comedy club there, and we got to see all of these guys.
The reason I ask
yeah.
is because where is your loyalty on an NFL team at all, if at all? I know you can't tend to be impartial, but is it with the Jets, the Giants, the Patriots, or
Well,
is it?
I don't
I
know
know
that
you
I-
went to Syracuse. I know you went to
Yeah.
Syracuse.
The Cuse, I don't have any strong attachment to. I mean, I like to see them do well, but I don't get emotionally distraught if they don't, because I'm not expecting much ever since Paul Free Pasqualoni, what was there for so many years.
That's nice.
You know what happens, Dave? I don't know if this happened to you. By being a member of the media, you're supposed to be impartial about the local teams. Now, back in the day when we were covering the Dolphins on a regular basis, I used to see you out there all the time, and I was involved doing coaches shows and all these other things, and pregame and play-by-play, and as you did on various sports. You can't help but formulate some kind of attachment and identity with the players, and you start rooting for them and the coaches. But in general, you're trying to stay impartial, and I would have to say that over the years, I like certain teams and certain players, but I don't know that I have any tremendous loyalty one way or another to any particular team at this point. I'm not sure about you, Dave.
It's been taken out of me. There's no doubt about it. I mean, I have teams. Washington is my childhood. Green Bay is currently family as far as the NFL goes. Same with the NBA with the Wizards. For my son's there. I was never a Bullets fan when I was living in D.C., but
you didn't like Gene Shue with
it was funny, strangely, and I'm trying to remember how. I liked as a child the Knicks, even though I had a team almost in my backyard in Baltimore. But that evolved, and obviously when I worked with the Heat, I became a fan, and I still like the organization. I admire some of the people there, but I'm not painting my face for anybody. Any of that stuff. I think because I had to be so impartial for so many years covering games at a network level, you don't want to be seen as, even though teams are always, some viewers are absolutely convinced you're rooting against their team, or you're rooting too hard for someone else. And we're like, I would sometimes say, what was the score of the game? Was it say 37-0? Because we're going to tend to be more complimentary of the team that's leading by 37 points than we're not.
Yeah.
And if it sounds like we're kissing their butt, maybe because they're playing good. It's always amused me that the public has this perception that everybody hates everybody or everybody loves everybody too much. But no, a lot of that's been taken out of me. You're right, Tifo. It just sort of like, okay, I'll watch now.
It's not a bad thing. It's just that's the way it goes.
No, I mean, unless my sons were directly involved in games when they were playing college basketball, I really just don't get worked up as a fan. I just don't.
Dave Lamont and Jeff DeForrest joining us on Main Street. Gary Allen with you. I lost all my love for the Colts when Peyton Manning basically said goodbye.
And then hello.
Yeah. I still follow the Boston Celtics. I love them. That was the one thing I carried from my childhood. Dave knows of my love for the Phillies since I grew up in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, up until a certain age. But outside of the Hurricanes, if the Phillies lose, how many games do they play? If the Boston Celtics lose a game now at the beginning of the season, it's not any big deal to me. They've already had 2 losses. I think when my brother died too, it kind of took, I don't know if you guys will understand this, but it took a little of the steam out of me because he had said to me many years before he passed that even players, ex-players, and you both know this, they don't always watch the Super Bowl. They don't always pay attention to what the Miami Dolphins are doing or whatever's doing. They're out playing golf. They're having their families together, and they might watch a game every now and then. But after a while, you begin to say, there's more to life than this.
There are teams I delight in watching them lose, though. I don't know. No, and the Dallas Cowboys would be one of them.
Yes.
So this has been a spectacular season for me in that regard.
My next subject.
I love seeing Jerry in agony in the booth, and I keep saying this, and it occurred to me that I haven't had this much pleasure dealing with anything that had to do with Dallas since I was in puberty when Debbie Does Dallas came out, watching Jerry Jones just going through spasms in the box there in agony over every lame move that the Cowboys make, knowing that he is probably personally largely responsible, and all he needs to do is look in the mirror. So there aren't teams like that. I would say there are a couple of teams that I root against 1,000%, and that has overtaken my affinity for certain teams, which I still am very fond of various organizations, as Dave said. I mean, you work with the Miami Heat, you can't help but notice the organization is the epitome of class, symbolized and embolized by Pat Riley being at the helm. And many of the teams that I've had a chance to work with, I have great respect for. But I don't know that I have any overwhelming rooting interest in any particular team at this point. But I do root against the Cowboys. I love watching them.
I can't help it, too, because in Washington, I was always, when George Allen made the then Redskins big in the early 70s, he used to call them the goddamn Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah.
And that stuck with me. And the other thing is I think the Cowboys just get shoved down our throats. I saw something today that they have 4 more national television appearances. That team.
Everybody wants to see Cooper Rush. I mean, you know what? Maybe he can duplicate that magic he had last year.
4 more national TV appearances. Tom Brady's first 3 games as the lead analyst on Fox, I think all 3 of them were calling the Cowboys. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theory person, but that's as close to not a conspiracy, but the NFL's idea that this is what we want as fans, or what they think we want as fans. I understand that they have a large fan base. Completely understand that. But can you name a more overhyped franchise with 0 delivery in the last 30 years of professional sports?
Which brings up my question, Dave. When do we stop calling them America's team?
I don't know anybody does that anymore. Yeah. That was an NFL Films thing from the 70s. And I mean, if anybody does it now, it's sarcastic.
It's a joke. I mean, Jeff and Stephen A. Smith both had the same thing. He hates the Dallas Cowboys. You know,
that would be probably as much as we had in common.
That's pretty much it. But I mean, I am so tired of Jerry Jones. I mean,
well, yeah. How can you not be?
I love it. I love watching a guy make excuses. It's great.
He's 95 years old. They have to wheel him in and wheel him out of the games. And he's a nasty guy on the radio lately. I mean, I think he's losing it completely.
Was he 83 years old?
That's not the first time he's reamed out the 2 guys that were on the air asking him softball questions. And you know how this goes, Dave. You've done coaching shows where, I mean, look, you're obligated to ask a few questions. You're going to put it as gently as you possibly can. I mean, did you take anything positive away from that 48-0 shellacking last week?
Yeah, that's always a classic.
That type of thing. And that's how you phrase it. It's almost like you're interviewing Tiger Woods after a bad round. Oh, geez, you know what? That 87 really doesn't reflect.
Yeah, but you know what? Tiger would give you a straight answer on something like that.
Yeah.
But I think, and the thing with Jerry Jones is he refuses to back away and let true football people, just because he played at Arkansas doesn't make him a football person. He got lightning in a bottle early with Jimmy Johnson. He took his lumps right away, took all the criticism for reshaping the team, and it worked.
Yes.
But he and Jimmy just couldn't decide which one of them had the bigger ego. Well, they both obviously have enormous egos, but they had a big argument over credit, so I can win with anybody. Well, he did win with anybody, but he hasn't won with anybody since. Even bringing in a guy like Mike McCarthy, who proved his qualifications at other places, and even that's not working out. The one constant is Jerry Jones. Now, he's not going to sell the team. He will die as the owner of the Cowboys. He will die with the most toys. That's the way it's going to go. But I don't know at what point do you delude yourself with something has to change. And the only thing that seems to be the same every day is me. Maybe I need to back away a little bit from this whole thing.
Guys like that don't have those kind of realizations, though. As you know, you've been around sports or even business, whatever. But my favorite thing, the depiction of the Cowboys situation, is when people post this on social media and they have a picture of a smoking hot Dallas Cowboys cheerleader on one side, and on the other side they have 3 old bags. And it's the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders the last time they won a championship. Yeah. And that kind of tells the story. It's been a while.
Jeff, if you see that, would you please send it to me? I'd like to see
Oh,
that.
it pops up occasionally
Please
on
do
social
not
media.
send that to me.
I want to see.
Literally, they have like 3 bag ladies in Dallas Cowboy cheerleader outfits, and these were the cheerleaders the last time they won a title.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, all right.
just-
Now, let's talk local. Tua's going to get hit. He's going to get hurt. We've talked about it before. He wants to continue to play. But is it the Buffalo Bills and that's it in the East? I mean, is that pretty much it right now, Jeff? Is that what the line is?
Not much else, that's for sure. I mean, the
I want
Patriots
to
are.
get that out of the way. I want to get that out of the way.
I'm laughing because that's a real bold statement there, Gare.
Yeah.
No. I mean, I'm asking because
Is it the Bills and
I
nobody
know-
else, Dave? I'll hang up and listen.
Yeah.
No.
Thank you, Jeff from Pembroke Pines.
But I mean, I know how bad everybody is, but is the Buffalo Bills so far superior to anybody else in the AFC?
At this point, you'd have to say yes.
What's the line, Jeff?
Well, they're vulnerable because we've seen that they can get sloppy, but they've been much better than everybody else so far. They eked out a couple of wins, failed to cover the point spread for the degenerates out there in the last couple of weeks, but nonetheless, they're winning games. Josh Allen certainly has been more effective than the other quarterbacks in the division, and the Patriots weren't expected to do anything. You thought I thought the Dolphins were going to win the AFC East before the season started.
A lot of people.
I was one of those delusional cats down here, and I thought, wow, they gave all this money to people, so they're all going to be happy. They seem to have the right mix and the right kind of roster to execute Mike McDaniel's type of offense, but McDaniel wasn't able to adjust to anything, and we'll see if maybe he can make some changes tonight and they come out with a victory. But in general, I mean, they appear to be light years behind what we thought they were going to be at the beginning of the year, and the Jets have been abysmal. So those two teams, Dolphins and the Jets, losing a lot of close games, but probably shouldn't have been that close to begin with if they were going to be AFC Eastern Division champions. I don't see either of those teams being alive to catch the Bills and the Patriots.
The lead
You'd have to
is too
discount
great.
that.
The lead is too great. Miami, don't forget, is 0-2 against them this year.
Yeah.
So it's basically an extra 2 games behind what they already are. And the other thing, remember the preseason talk, as you guys mentioned, the Dolphins, they got it all together. They got all these offensive pieces. Tua's coming back. He's going to be okay. You got the chain, and he's fast, and Tyree, all this other stuff. Tyreek, and then Tua gets hurt. Well, they don't really have a capable backup. Now, that's going to screw any team.
Yeah.
Just about. Let's be fair about that. But Buffalo is the surprise because when their receiving core fell apart, don't forget that they didn't have any pity parties when Gabe Davis left and went to Jacksonville, where he's done virtually nothing as he's battled injuries. And these other receivers have stepped up. Constant, Josh Allen. So, and the run game has been a little bit better than advertised. Defensively, they're good. They're not incredible. They're good. And suddenly, Allen is playing at an MVP level, along with probably Lamar Jackson. They're going to fight it out for the MVP in the AFC this year, it looks like. It's in the NFL, period. So once again, it's who has the best quarterback? Well, that's Buffalo. And I actually thought if there was going to be a second, I saw the Bills maybe even being third because of all the playoff disappointments they had. Eventually, you get to a point where you go, okay, that's it. The soda can is flat. We can't keep this up, and they have to tear it down. Well, not yet. And maybe
will it come down? Will it come down to KC and Baltimore?
I would not ignore Buffalo in that equation, simply because of Josh Allen's abilities. But Baltimore has another guy who has to be considered for the MVP is Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
And what he has done for that team. We keep thinking for the last 2 or 3 years, this guy, he carries the ball 6,000 times a game. He can't keep this up. And one day we'll be right, but not now. And once again, he's just battering the hell out of people. I forgot what game I watched early in the season where guys were literally disinterested in tackling him. They didn't want to do it. I was in September. It was very early. Week 2 or week 3. It was maybe the Sunday, whatever. It doesn't matter. They wanted absolutely no part of this guy. So Kansas City just wins somehow, some way.
Yeah.
You kind of be thinking, are they going to be like the Hurricanes? And eventually they're just going to lay an egg but that's okay. They're going to make playoffs. And in Mahomes, you have a unique weapon who has the capability of turning anything into a remarkable play. Very few people can do that. Well, actually, so can Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, come to think of it. I would say yes to your question, Gary, and I would not discount Buffalo at all yet.
And does Pittsburgh at all play into that?
Ooh, forgot about them.
Can't discount them.
Forgot about them.
Playing, excellent defense. Russell
Jeff,
Wilson seems to have provided a spark.
What's the line in the AFC right now, Jeff?
AFC, I think the Ravens. The Chiefs will be favored. I'm with Dave. I was going to make that same parallel that you might be looking at a situation like you had with the Hurricanes, where they're winning these games and it's a little bit fugazi, and they're always lucking out in close games, getting a call, getting a break, and eventually that catches up with you, and you're thinking, well, maybe that catches up with them in the postseason this year, where I don't know that they go undefeated through the regular season. It doesn't appear that that's going to be the case because they've been, on a short leash there, escaping many times, including yesterday, which imagine you're the poor schmuck that had the Broncos on the money line. And you're lining up. I mean, you're giddy. You're high-fiving everybody in front of the TV set, standing up, going, 35-yard field goal. Everybody makes these. And it gets blocked. But I do have a buddy. I have a rooting interest in the Ravens because I have a friend of mine who, I don't know if I mentioned this last time we were on. He had 2 parlays working involving all championship teams. So he had already cashed. He cashed one, $100 parlay he had, betting UConn to win the basketball championship, college basketball championship, Celtics to win the NBA championship, check. The longest shot was the Panthers to win the Stanley Cup. He had that, and it was all parlayed, and he ended up for $100 getting $90,000 back when the Dodgers won the World Series. Now, he took this one step further, and he has a $50 parlay that also incorporates the Ravens to win the Super Bowl. He's got the first 4 components in. If the Ravens win the Super Bowl, this $50 parlay somehow pays $480,000. So vicariously, I'm rooting for my buddy Dylan Rossi, who has this ticket. It's such a wild prop that the Hard Rock, where he made the bet, is actually putting this up on their Twitter accounts and showing how much money you can win by betting a small amount of money. So it doesn't seem impossible. There was a little bit of damage done when they lost to Winston and the Browns a couple of weeks ago, but they bounced right back and looked pretty good. And it does seem like there's a wide open path there for maybe, 3-4 teams, Dave? As you mentioned, if you want to count the Pittsburgh Steelers in there. I'm not sure they're a championship
the NFC.
team.
Do we trust Detroit?
Detroit's
and
good.
Philly is also playing better. Philly is also waking up after a very slow start.
Yeah.
It's interesting because you got me thinking when you mentioned the Ravens that we've been teased by them before.
Yeah.
Last year, right? Last year was going to be the year. This year, when things get tough, Lamar Jackson doesn't have to do 10,000 things for them to win. He just has to turn and hand the ball off.
And you have to give Harbaugh credit for always making these, this team.
It's a good organization.
Yes,
Talk about really solid,
sound organization.
Stable, Gary, we go all the way back to what we talked about a while ago about constant firing and constant
same coach, GM.
Yes. They keep it completely. It's really a model organization.
Just like the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Well, exactly. Stability wins. Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season. He does have Super Bowl rings, and he's got a playoff team this year. And from everything I've read, guys absolutely love playing for him. And it's a family team. Although the Giants have been too, and that's not working out at the moment, but it has in the past. Stability matters. Panicking never helps. No. And you talked about, what will the Gators do? What will Norvell do? If it will happen to Florida State? I think Miami, the Hurricanes have panicked too often. But they feel like the string has run out. Maybe they're going to be patient. Not maybe. They are going to be patient with Cristobal, and they're having a fine season. They're probably going to make the playoffs. So at least they'll get to the ACC title game, thanks to Pitt losing. But, I'm a big fan of stability, and the Ravens are as model an organization in the NFL as you're going to find.
Yeah, ever since they moved from Cleveland, they've really, really have been a model of consistency as far as coaching is concerned, front office people. Maybe some of the secondary people have come and gone. But, you're right, Dave, and 100%. If you have a good owner who understands the game and gets the hell out of the way and lets the GM and the head coach and the other coaches do their job, every once in a while, maybe he looks in the room a little bit to see what's going on. I mean, when and please, Dave, help me with this. The guy who was the GM for the Colts when Manning was there, he was also with the Buffalo Bills and the Carolina. Huh?
Corsi?
Polian.
No, Paulie.
Polian. Yeah.
As long as he was running the team, Irsay didn't butt his nose in. You never heard from him during that period of time. He was happy-go-lucky. Everything was going great. The minute that Polian retired, suddenly Jim is butting his nose into everything. And outside of the quarterback that they lost, I mean, they have not been the same.
No, and I mean the whole Andrew Luck story. I mean, if he was upright, if he could have survived with minimum amount of injuries, Lord knows what could have happened. That guy was wicked talented.
And that's because they hired a GM who nobody had ever heard of. When I spoke to Brian Baldinger, I said, this guy supposedly was a assistant general manager at the Philadelphia Eagles. He said, Gary, nobody's ever heard of this guy. And he's not even in the NFL anymore. I mean, and he made some ferocious offensive line picks, but you're right.
Well, and the Richardson pick. The thing that's amazing about scouts, and they spend all this money on player personnel and checking these guys out, and they go through all these analytics. You could see at Florida that Anthony Richardson, as athletic as he was, couldn't throw. I mean, he seemed like he had some kind of eye damage or something, because he was always throwing the ball at other teams. And you're saying to yourself, essentially, as you're drafting this guy to make this transition into what should be a higher level of sophistication in terms of being able to deal with negativity and different defenses and whatever. Yeah. And the guy was only going to get worse at this, or so it seemed.
And he's tapping out of a game?
Regardless, I mean, he's throwing a ball at the other team half the time.
And he's had injury issues. You know, it's really turning into almost a Jamarcus Russell level disaster.
But a real good kid, though. I mean, he seems like I have never seen a guy so humble in accepting his demotion as Richardson was. And if I'm not mistaken, I thought I saw a story about him. He's like a terrific character guy. From all angles. Good. I mean, he helps people out, and he spends a lot of time doing charitable things. A really terrific guy. So you're rooting for the guy, but I mean, if you were watching him play in college, you could see this guy couldn't do it. It wasn't like he was the best guy on a bad team. He was making these same mistakes that make him even more vulnerable as a pro.
Yeah. And then the Carolina Panthers pick who they pick, and he's a disaster.
The whole team is a disaster, though. It's a bad ownership situation. The funny thing is they actually have a little bit of talent at running back, but they have no one else to turn to. I think their plan is to see if he can play out of it, as opposed to everybody else. Now, you look at Chicago, Caleb Williams is off to a very rough start. Part of their problem, however, is they have no one to block for him. I think he was sacked 9 times yesterday. So that doesn't tell me that it's a bad quarterbacking. That tells me the offensive line is really, really faulty. So the Bears have all sorts of problems. We talk about how these, did we know that Jaden Daniels was going to work out? Well, so far he has, but who's to say from day to day how these guys work? Justin Fields, Mike Tomlin removes him, and he goes, that's good. Let's go with
Where's Trey Lance these days? Is he in the CFL? Where is he?
Played yesterday.
Oh, yeah?
He played for the Cowboys yesterday.
There you go.
At the end of that game, he's right now the number 2 quarterback in Dallas with Prescott out. And look he was a first-round pick. He went really early to San Francisco.
They dealt all kinds of capital to acquire him.
Yeah.
With the couple of minutes we have left, do the Canes play it out against Wake Forest and Syracuse? Yeah. I mean, do they win those games?
Yes.
In spite of what we saw on Saturday, Dave?
Yes. I mean, now we know what teams are going to try to do to beat them, but maybe they were trying already. That Georgia Tech was just really successful at it, which is keep Cam Ward in a nice, comfortable, seated position on the bench. But can you pull that off? Wake Forest is not very good this year. Syracuse is very much up and down. So I think Miami will get to the ACC title game against
SMU, I guess.
Probably. And Rhett Lashley. Their former offensive coordinator, who may well be headed for higher ground than Dallas if he's interested.
Yeah. Jeff?
0-12, baby. That's what I'm looking at tonight, this business with Miami. Hurricanes, look, I'll always have a soft spot in my heart for the Hurricanes. We talked about how your rooting interest may diminish over the years, but nonetheless, a lot of good times spent around that program, and very, very solid backer of the Hurricane football team. But Syracuse, I don't see them as so much of a threat. They throw the ball with McCord, and he's had a mixed bag of success. But we saw that the formula was, as Dave stated, Try and keep more. I mean, as old a proven formula as you can get. Keep the guy on the bench. They did it. Always talked about it with Brady or Peyton Manning. You're going to have to sustain long drives. Georgia Tech was able to do it. I don't know if Syracuse is going to be able to do it, and I haven't seen enough of Wake Forest to really give you an intelligent opinion on that. But they did come up with a victory this past week, so maybe not incapable, and they scored a lot of points. So that one may be interesting as well. But I do believe that Mario Cristobal is worth 7 points a game to the point spread, and that is the thing that you have to watch out for with the Hurricanes. Worth a negative 7 points a game. If you were talking about home field worth 3, Cristobal is worth -7, and that's kind of where it stands,
Right.
and it also makes him vulnerable for these straight-up losses like he incurred this past week.
All right, guys, we have killed an hour. I just want
That
to
was
thank
it?
you all very much. Yeah,
Wow.
you'll be back on December 16th. We have a very special show. I won't be here.
Oh,
Dave
that does
and
make it
Jeff-
special.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. Dave and Jeff will be hosting the show. I will be off somewhere doing whatever I got to do. As a matter of fact, my agent is in Jeff's home right now, barking out the rules for the next show. And I just want to thank
my
everybody.
dog's kind of old. He's literally barking at nothing.
Anyway, I just want to thank everybody for joining us. I want to thank Dave. I want to thank Jeff. Thank all of you out there. Until we get together next time, take care of yourself. God bless you, and have a good one.
This